Well, hey, it is another Georgia Cairo connection with the GCC. We got a special guest today. Is Dr. Matt McCoy. He is not only a mentor that we've looked up to for years, but he's a friend. And I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I know you're busier than most, so it's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Drew. I'm busy, but everybody's busy. I hear that all the time in chiropractic, right? People are busy. People are too busy to get involved.
Yeah,
Everybody's busy, but
yeah, yeah. That's it. And just if people need a overview, Dr. McCoy, you're on the board at Sherman, Cairo Futures. You're running that, CEO, founder of that, editor of three journals. That's the Journal of Upper Cervical Chiropractic Research, Pediatric, Maternal, and Family Health, Philosophy, Principles, and Practice of Chiropractic, Vice President of the Foundation for Vertebral Subluxation Research. And if you're not a member of the foundation, do that. It is it's just overflowing of resources of posts you can put on your social media. I've already scheduled 14 months worth of posts out that y'all have already got together. With works cited. I don't even have to do it. And it's amazing. We appreciate all your work and really, I say this every time I talk about you, whether it's on stage, on here, or just one-on-one with people, that if you're not using Cairo Futures for your malpractice insurance, there's a good chance that you are funding the destruction of the profession. And that's I honestly believe that. It may not be fully true. There's some other ones out there, but there's a good chance people are doing that if they're not with Cairo Futures. We love your support. We love your coverage. You even been doing a lot of work up at YOLO Acres, up at the compound.
Yeah, speaking of YOLO Acres, you're up there in North Georgia now, so
yeah, it's
I'm not calling in from there. I'm at my where we live and work and where Alex goes to school and all that stuff. We'll be up at YOLO Acres this weekend.
That's awesome, and it's good to see your son Alex. You'll send me pictures, videos of him. That boy is working. He is working. It's good to see that though. You're instilling your work ethic in him.
I don't know if I'm instilling anything in him except a hatred for me.
That's the truth. That's the truth. But we all have that.
I'm trying to teach him a work ethic, but he's not liking it.
No, I didn't like it when my dad did the same thing to me. But now when we got to get work done, well, shoot, it's not with a hoe and hoeing 40 acres of sweet potatoes and pumpkins, so it's all right.
Yeah,
I can go to this meeting and sit there. It's air conditioned.
I'd rather be out. I'd rather be out hoeing a field.
That's right.
Than sitting in a meeting. The older I get, the longer I've been doing all this stuff, the more I just want to be outside and tearing stuff down and building stuff.
Yeah, that's it. And you've been in the profession how many years now?
I graduated from Life College at the time in 1989, September 1989.
Wow,
that's when you say how long I've been in the profession, I've started as a student in 85. So I guess that's officially being in the profession, at least I think so.
Yeah, that's 39 years, man.
Something like that. I think that's complicated algebra for me, but I think that's right. And then, but the reality, I mean, I consider, you know, all the time I was a patient growing up. You know, I mean, I've been around the profession since I was 7 years old. You know, it's I've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, and
I remember, I don't know, maybe 12, somewhere around there, maybe just preteen. I had an older brother. I have an older brother who's a chiropractor. We graduated from the second class at Life University, at Life College. I don't even think they were accredited at the time. But he,
I don't think they were when I was there either.
Well, you know, it's actually very serious, because I think even when I was a student, life was just really in the 80s. Then in 85, when I started, life was just really finalizing all its accreditation stuff with the CCD and all that nonsense. And I mean, crazy. But you know, I remember as a kid, the preteen, driving around with my brother, listening to Sid Williams on tapes about chiropractic. My brother once took me to a prerequisite course he was taking in New York before he went to chiropractic college. He took me to his organic chemistry course. And I'll never forget it. We made soap that day.
Soap. That's awesome.
So I've been around chiropractic a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some stuff.
You have, good and bad. You've seen it grow and flourish, and you've seen the ugliness behind the curtain sometimes, I'm sure.
I you know, I have an older brother who is involved in law enforcement his whole life. He's actually getting ready to retire in his 70s. But he was, you know, involved with investigating organized crime and all kinds of, you know, serious stuff like that. And when he lectures, he talks about how his job is to climb into a garbage can every day, you know. So, and I relate to that to some extent, because a lot of what I'm involved in, whether it's, I mean, malpractice for 30 years, you can imagine what I've seen. But the politics of this profession, I mean, I end up spending a lot of time in the seedy underside of this profession, and I definitely see all the good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in it. I wouldn't be fighting for it. But I also see the bad, you know. So it's interesting on a regular basis, for sure.
Yeah, and if you just focus on the bad, it could be demoralizing. But then you're aware enough that you got to see the good and focus on the good and have the hope in that too. So it's a tough balance sometimes, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's any different. I mean, it's different, but it's similar to being in practice. I mean, you know, crunching bones all day long. You see it, sure, even up in North Georgia. You know, you have to deal with people who are ignorant, people who don't like what you're doing, or don't, you know. I mean, you got to constantly convince people why they need chiropractic care. You know, that you're not some quack and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, it's sad that that's still going on. You know, 39 years in the profession, and we're still, you know, fighting for cultural authority. So, you know, it's no different. You see it, you have to persevere. You got to focus on the positive. You got to focus on, you know, your patients get better, your patients who love you. And you know.
and it's a great fight. You know what I mean? I was talking to a guy last night. He was a little down and out, and I'm like, but man, listen, like probably 2% of the people are under good long-term real chiropractic care. That leaves you 98% of the population that you can tell this to. Like, that's amazing. Like the fields are white with the harvest.
Yeah.
You know, it's I know one of the things that I love the most that I have is my education. I would not trade that for anything. I would not trade the ability to adjust people on a regular basis for anything. And you're a part of my education pathway. Just because you were my research teacher. I think that was 10th, 12th quarter. And, there's so many threads woven in this fabric of everybody's life, and it's
when did you graduate? When did you graduate?
06.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was there through all the hoopla and mess, and so it was interesting. It was interesting. I think the few of us that were there, we're doing well now in life, in our mindset, and everything else.
So you were a student when Life lost its accreditation?
Yeah. I was in maybe 6th quarter, 7th.
And so you were one of the students that stayed around.
Yeah.
You didn't flee.
No. I did take a class up at Palmer with Fred Barge before he passed.
Really?
So I took that quarter. I took a lot of Ron Kirk classes, like a lot of the wellness classes and spinal hygiene.
I got it. Yeah.
And I would come back and take those exams, and because Dr. Barge, he was getting ready to retire, and I'm like, well, shoot, I would like to have a class with him. He'd come to class with his cane, and his gravitas and his vocabulary he used was something else.
Unbelievable. How fortunate for you. That was kind of a blessing in disguise. Talk about making lemonade out of lemons, man. Yeah, so I speaking of Fred Barge, I heard Fred Barge speak for the first time in first quarter at Life in my spinal anatomy course. So he used to, I forget what he was doing at the time, probably involved with the ICA, but, he used to be on campus quite often, to meet with Sid and stuff. And so he walked into our spinal anatomy class. Dr. Barry Belgard was the teacher, was the instructor. And he and Dr. Belgard knew each other. So basically, we had no idea. I mean, I had heard of Fred Barge because of my involvement in chiropractic and being around DE even before school and stuff. But I had never met him or heard him speak or seen him in person. And so he walks in and takes over the class. And it was amazing. I mean, you can imagine first quarter. And we had a lot of good instructors in first quarter. But to get, an hour-long lecture from Fred Barge, and he started it off with talking about the rats in the dump. And, it seems so simple now. All of these sort of stories that chiropractors tell in their lay lectures, and we heard all the time, 30-something years. When you hear it for the first time, it's way different. You really have an epiphany. And for somebody that grew up in that environment and had never heard that, it was even more so. It just drove the point home. But his ability to speak, the way his oratory skills, is amazing. And then just keep beating a Fred Barge horse, so to speak. The best experiences with him were on 2 occasions having a libation with him and smoking a cigar. I remember we were in Washington the first time we were in Washington, D.C. for a legislative thing. I don't know what we were fighting at the time, but a bunch of chiropractors were there. Washington, a hotel, all the lobbyists stay and all this kind of stuff. And he and I sat at the bar. He bought me a beer. We smoked a cigar and talked about chiropractic. It was amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it seems like nowadays in 2024,
talking about all this kind of stuff. I mean, the famous saying of, where are the new war horses, Fred Bard? It's like you turn around in these battles we have for protecting chiropractic, you look around to see who's behind you, and there's nobody there.
Yeah. And now it seems like in 2024 that a lot of those people aren't there anymore. Like the ones that everybody looked up to, everybody has their own little clique, and it just seems like everything is disintegrating. You know what I mean? It just
it's the long tail in terms of how tribes and everything else are being distributed in the profession, especially with social media and the internet. It's not like it was back in the day where everybody, there were people who were leaders, and and of course we still had camps in the profession, but you knew who the leaders were on each side, and people tended to listen to them and go to see them and hear them speak in person, because that's the only way you could.
And it's like they were a leader because of like the work that they did, but now you can be a leader because you have like brick walls,
Right. You have a Zoom account.
Like, how does it look? How does it look? And you were talking about some of the challenges. What do you see is like the biggest challenge coming in chiropractic for the next 10 years or so?
There's no question about it. I mean, you and I have talked about this. We've been in meetings together where this has been talked about. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that we should be spending our time on at this point is undoing the monopolies, dismantling the monopolies in chiropractic education, licensing, testing, regulation, all that sort of stuff. That has to be the focus, for our faction of the profession. Our faction of the profession. When I say that, I'm talking about a faction of the profession that focuses on locating, analyzing, correcting vertebral subluxations. And I'm not placing or making any judgments on anybody for anything else that anybody does. You have a license in your state. You do whatever you want relative to that license that you're allowed to do within your scope. Have at it, have fun. But I hope that in the mix of all of that, the focus of it is finding, analyzing, correcting vertebral subluxations. And if we want to continue to be able to do that, even people who do other things, if they want that to survive and to continue, then we've got to undo all of this control that the chiropractic cartel has over the profession. And all of that stuff is enshrined in state statutes, rules, and regulations that give monopolies to private corporations that accredit schools, that perform testing, and that regulate the profession. And unfortunately, it gives them a statutorily mandated monopoly, and that's un-American. It restrains trade. It's not consistent with American values, certainly, and it also stifles competition. It increases costs. It's one of the reasons why tuition is so high. I mean, we could go on, but that has to be the priority of our faction of the profession. There's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of fires in the profession that need to be put out. But this one is the one that's raging. This is the one, it's a 5-alarm fire, and something's got to be done about it, because slowly but surely, our ability to find, analyze, and correct vertebral subluxations is going by the wayside.
And I agree with that. It's like it's the biggest fire, the most important fire that's burning right now, and we need to make sure we extinguish that. And I think it'll essentially save the profession, because the way it is now.
I hope that's true. I don't know if it's true, but I think certainly it's the only thing that gives us any chance. You know, if there's no freedom in terms of, you know, how somebody practices within that scope, and the more and more that you know, addressing subluxation is marginalized, then how is it going to survive? You know, it's professional birth control. Where other than a few schools, you know, because we always talk about, oh, there's still a few schools, but the reality is those few schools still have to follow the standards, the accreditation rules, the state scope issues, all that kind of stuff. And so how much time is left over to actually teach them chiropractic? You know, if you look at the standards for CCE standards for accreditation, it has competencies, meta competencies that every student has to demonstrate competency in before the school gives them a diploma. Well, only one of those competencies has really anything to do with chiropractic. You know, there's one competency that deals with the adjustment, and that competency is worded in such a way that adjustment is a synonym with manipulation. It's this, and subluxation is the same thing as joint dysfunction, and they're interchangeable. So, you know, if a school is teaching somebody how to, you know, go up and down the spine and push down on the high spots and make noise, yeah, they're competent, you know, as opposed to, you know, as Sid would talk about, an exacting analysis, you know, to determine the nature and characteristics of that subluxation and determine the most effective technique to reduce it. You know, that sort of, I'll say nuance, but to me it's not nuance, it's the meat of what we do. But that nuance that's what scares me, is going away. Because you may hear people say, well, you know, I do laser and I do needling and I do this, but I also check them for subluxation, you know. But if it's not an exacting analysis, you know, are they really being checked, and are you really correcting anything? So that's what my fear is, you know, that we're losing, and we're losing it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we always discuss that whatever analysis you use, whether it's Pierce or full spine, Gonstead, whatever that analysis is, pre-check to show you that they are subluxated. You correct that subluxation. You better do a post-check to make sure it's gone. You know, because if there's no post-check, how do you know?
Amen.
You know, it's not just
their pain is gone,
cracking,
right?
Yeah, they feel better.
Yeah,
you know, it's but you know that's the shape we're in. You know, and we need there's a lot of work to do to dismantle this whole thing, and I'm not sure of all the just like we were saying earlier, all the interconnectedness of everything, but it's complicated. You know, there's you know, this group that's connected to this group through de facto almost, and it's there's a lot to dismantle and a lot to take in, and it's I just know we appreciate all your work at it. You know, it's and now talking about something a little bit better. What gives you hope in the profession? Because, you know, I know you wouldn't keep working so hard if you didn't see a glimmer at the end of the tunnel. What is that?
What gives me hope at this point is kind of what you were alluding to, the fact that there is a group, there's an fairly organized group, coalition, I'll call it, of organizations that see things the way that we see them, that are talking about this, that are having this conversation. And you know this because the GCC is a signatory to those resolutions. The DE organization are signatories to these resolutions, and these are resolutions that have been signed by over 50 trade organizations, state organizations, corporations doing business within chiropractic, private foundations, nonprofit foundations, tech groups. So it's sort of a wide array of people and organizations that are involved in the subluxation centered aspect of the profession that all have signed on to resolutions that say, that's it, enough is enough.
Yep.
It's operating as a cartel in the chiropractic profession. Let's just stop that. It makes perfect sense to so many people, except the people that benefit from having a cartel. So if I have any hope, that's where it is, because if at this point in my career and my life in general, even my personal life, if I didn't see that, there was that hope and that drive, and there were people, like I said before, the new war horses behind us, stepping up, then I don't know that I'd continue at this point, because it can be overwhelming, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the hope that I have.
Yeah, and I know my board at GCC, board at DE, we're happy to sign on, because like Dr. Sid would tell us, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Yeah. And we don't want to be a part of the problem. We want to fix this and grow the profession and just have a future for our kids and grandkids to be under good principled chiropractic care, you know?
Amen. You know, that's you mentioned DE, and I was thinking about this morning. I went to DE as a young kid, you know, before chiropractic college, and as a student and after school and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I loved DE, and I loved the speakers and the philosophy and all of that. But what I loved the most was when Sid got up and talked about politics. When he filled us in on what was going on, when he told us what the fight was, when he outlined the battle, when he talked about his own battles. I mean, to me, that was it. That's what resonated with me more than anything. And I think it was because I grew up in it, you know, in terms of philosophy. So and still to this day, I mean, I don't need constant reminding of the philosophy of chiropractic and the power that made the bone. Well, I don't need to be reminded of that. It's like, it's me. It's part of my core in terms of how I live my life and what I believe in my own personal and spiritual philosophies. But so for me, it was the political piece, you know, and Sid was a master at that for sure. And he's the poster child for what the cartel will do to you if you don't go along. Right. That
was his demise, you know, was the cartel.
Absolutely. And he fought to the end.
Yeah. And when he would talk about politics, he would actually give us like action steps, like go do this, do that, don't do this. Like, you know, it was
he didn't mince words.
It was different words. I can't say those anymore. So like, what would you say, like the normal day-to-day chiropractor, just cranking it out in their office, seeing families and kids and just detecting, correcting subluxations, what would you say they could do to get involved? They don't have a whole lot of extra time. They got kids in baseball, basketball, cheerleading, but like they want to do something, but they don't know what. Like, what would you suggest?
Well, the first thing is I would say that I hear you that you're busy. But like we said at the very beginning, right? We're all busy, and I don't want to come across like an a-hole, but you know, I have several businesses that I run. I have a teenager in high school. You know, I have a wife. We have, you know, I'm busy, you know. But this is important, you know. And we all have 24 hours in a day. And so to me, this is a time management issue. So the first thing I'd say is manage your time better and carve out a piece of that time to immerse yourself to some extent into chiropractic politics, right? That's number one. And the least effort it takes, especially in terms of time, is writing a check, okay? But here's the problem. Chiropractors write checks, sit in rooms with people on stage and they tell an emotional story and a tear runs down their face and chiropractors take their checkbooks out without checking the facts and making sure that are they being told the story or where's this money going, how's it really being used, all that kind of stuff. People. And that goes back to what you talked about at the beginning, something as simple as where you get your malpractice insurance. You can get your malpractice insurance from 3 or 4 different companies out there. But what are they doing with that premium? What are they doing with that money? Are they fighting for your values every day that they are in business? That's the question you should be asking. And then ask them for the specifics. What have you done for me lately? I don't care how long you've been insured with them. And this goes for organization, even, state organizations. It's easy to say, join your state organization. Well, what are you going to do with my money? If you're not going to join your state organization, get on a committee and pick up a shovel and help them, then at least make sure that you know what they're going to do with that money, right? So having said all of that, getting further involved, join your state organization. Make sure it's the state organization that supports your values. And if there isn't a state organization in your state that supports your values, then start one. We don't have that problem in Georgia because we have the Georgia Council of Chiropractic, right? So it's not an issue here. So join your state organization, but get involved in that organization. Help them out. Okay, write them a check, donate to their PAC. That's the easy thing to do. Show up at their legislative days, show up at their meetings, show up at their conventions, even if you don't need the hours. Show up and help out and volunteer and all that kind of stuff. Go to your state board meetings. Okay, your state board, whether it's in Georgia or any other state, meets there. It meets several times a year. I think they meet 4 times a year in Georgia. Drive down to Macon. Show up with the GCC, sit in that meeting, and make sure you know what's going on in the state. And the focus at the state level should be to get rid of the monopolistic language that exists in your state statute that gives the cartel the control that they have. Know your legislators. Find out who the people are that are the people that are going to make those changes for you and that are going to protect chiropractic in your state. Donate money to your alma mater. All right, chiropractors don't like to hear this, But here's the key: don't write the check to the general fund. Make sure you write that check to something you want it earmarked for. I don't write blank checks to any chiropractic college. What I do is I give my money directly to chiropractic students through scholarships that I've established, so that I know who that money is going to and I know what it's being used for. You write a check to the general fund of a chiropractic college, you don't know what it's being used for and whether it's going to end up helping a student or not. So, so you got to get to know your legislators locally. You got to get to know your legislators up in Washington, D.C. You want to take it a step further, travel to Washington, D.C. There's organizations in chiropractic besides the cartel that go to Washington. Go up there with them, speak to your legislators, because when you meet them in the state where you live and then you show up in Washington, D.C., they realize that you're serious, And the way you meet your legislators, it's very simple. You donate to their political action committee or to their political campaign. That's how you get to know them. And if you do that, they'll listen to you. If you don't do that, they're not going to listen to you.
And just be around. Like I go like a lot of our bigger state legislators. Like I just know them. I go see them. I'll send them a message, send them an email, send them a text, Facebook Messenger, like whatever. Like one of them, he walks up at my old college at North Georgia, and that's what we do. I go up there and I'll see him, and we'll talk for a minute. It's not a whole lot, but he knows who I am. And Dr. Sid would always say, it doesn't matter who you know, it matters who knows you.
That's right, because when something of importance relative to chiropractic comes across their desk, you want you to be the one that they pick up the phone and call and say, what do I need to know about this piece of legislation, or what do I need to know about this group or that group, as opposed to calling up the cartel.
Yeah, so it's but we really do. We're gonna wrap this up in a minute, but it's we just really appreciate you taking time and help guide us through the decades. And I was thinking the other day, you probably shared chiropractic on almost every continent. You've been around. People may not know, but you've been around, and it's just great to connect with you and be friends with you. I know I can call you. I wouldn't want anybody else up to bat for me if the time ever comes than you. So it's just amazing to talk to you.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate it. Appreciate everything you do.
No, man, we appreciate you, and we got a lot of events coming up for the GCC. We've got a June continuing ed summer CE, June 22nd to the 23rd. We're going to have Paul Blumsack of Waste Butt, Dr. Eddie Martinez, Greg Rubenstein, Dr. Jack Burla, Rebecca Yawn, Dr. Matt McCoy is going to be there, and the infamous Lee Frazier. So y'all come, y'all get scheduled for that. It's third weekend in June. It's going to be great. Then we have a golf tournament coming up. We have the Chiro Cup. That's going to be September 13th at Marietta City Club. There's no reason to miss it. You can see me play my one round of golf every year. I'm not good at it, but like Dr. Sid would say, if you're good at golf, you might be a crappy chiropractor. So I'm proud of not being good at golf, and we have such a good time. We have cigars and drinks, and it's all inclusive, and it's you would not think that a ball that's not moving would be so hard to hit, but it is. It is hard. And then throughout the year, we've got 5 or 6 more continuing ed weekends. We got some in Augusta. We got Savannah. We got South Georgia. That's in August. And then we have our annual convention back in Marietta, Atlanta. So I love the Savannah one. I like to go there. I go to all of them because I want to be there. But it's just a great events, every one of them. So much to learn, and we can never stop learning. That's the thing. We can never stop giving. And I love chiropractic. Love Dr. Matt. I love the GCC, and God bless America. Right? We're going to keep on working on our freedom.
Amen.